This question that I will make here, it's so important for me that I will split it in the image to make it right. And the question is, what advice would you give to someone looking to follow your steps and become a top IT paradigmologist?
Yeah, well, I don't, I don't know whether I'd advise it. You've got to follow your own path. Um, I became who I am by a series of fortunate accidents. It wasn't a plan. Um, Things just happened, um, but it it played. It was very much about my curiosity. I'm a curious kind of guy, interested in stuff, sometimes in depth, sometimes not so. But having people talk about T-shaped professionals, where you've got an in-depth understanding of one topic or maybe a few topics, and a broader and less deep, shallower understanding of other topics. Having that shallow understanding of other topics makes you aware of the kind of world that you're working in. And I can still find it interesting to discover different dimensions in our in our field. Um, yeah, what advice can you give? It's really is it's I think it's similar to what I spoke about when you're making organizational change, when you're trying to improve the performance of an IT department, that you can't see what the future looks like. You cannot envisage the desired future state other than the next step. And I think it's the same with your career. Your personality, your interests will change as you get older. So what you thought you wanted to do 10 years ago probably won't be what you think you want to do now. So you have to be, like I said, that you're going in that direction, but suddenly you realize that's the wrong direction. The direction has changed. You just got to be open, really, open to opportunities. Um, yeah. Hard to give people advice, I think.
That's great. And are there any particular books, courses, resources you recommend for mastering high velocity IT?
Well, you've got the main book, which I believe is only available if you follow the course. But there's another book which TSO have published, which is called the study reference and study guide, which is a summary of the examinable material. So the stuff you get examined on, the stuff in the certificate, is very compactly uh, summarized here, which is quite good. Um, there's another publication, this interesting story. This little book of mine is called Reflections on High Velocity IT, and it's a book I wrote about the book. So after the writing of High Velocity IT took about 9 months. And by the way, that's interesting. I was contracted to write somebody else's book. So although I wrote the book, it's like being a surrogate mother, that you bear a baby and then give it to the adoptive parents, and then it's their baby. It's not yours anymore. You've just got to, fingers crossed that they send it to the right school and give it the right upbringing, and hope that you get visiting rights to visit the baby, the child. So I think it was the end of July 2019. I think I delivered what I called my um, editor's cut, the editor's version. Me as the editor's version of the book. I gave that to Axelos, and then they chopped it and changed it and published their book. Anyway, that was an interesting process writing. I hadn't written. I'd written a few. I hadn't written a whole book before then. I'd written chapters or parts of books, but this was quite a big undertaking. And I felt inspired to write a book about the book, at least the process. So that book here, Reflections on High Velocity IT, tells a little story about how the book came about, the considerations that we had, some of the things that I would have included after the cutoff date, things that came to me afterwards, things that I had considered but hadn't included in the book. So there's a bit of content there as well. So that might be interesting. And apart from that, and that's really just in general, how do you keep up with stuff that's going on in the IT service management world? And I mentioned again, I think alongside High Velocity IT, the Drive Stakeholder Value book, and there's also a study and reference and study guide for Drive Stakeholder Value. That's a very interesting book if you're interested in the concept of co-creation between two parties. I tend to keep up to date with trends and stuff. I tend to follow LinkedIn primarily. Follow people on LinkedIn, and when you start following people, you'll see who they follow, and you can follow them as well if they have interesting stuff. See what they're talking about or what they're not talking about. And this often leads to publications, to webinars, to conferences. And there's so much content available. It's difficult to decide what to consume.